Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Training Talk right here on Personal Defense Network. This is the show where we talk about you, about your life, and how to protect it. Now, in the next hour, we're going to talk about how you can prepare and equip yourself to face your own worst case scenario and keep you and your family safe from harm. Now, on this show, we don't do religion or politics, so you're not going to hear conspiracy theories or like crazy fringe commentary or tinfoil hat stuff. None of that. Just reliable information that you can put to use in your life right away. And I hope that you will think enough of the show to share it with your friends and your family, your coworkers, maybe people at your church or golf club. If anybody actually belongs to golf clubs anymore, I don't know. But if you do, how about sharing the show with the people that you know, the people that you'd like to see stay safe in their lives too. And I'm sure they'll appreciate that you thought enough of them to suggest this show to them. So if you would share it on put it on Facebook and Twitter and maybe Instagram and all that other stuff and let people know, we'd sure appreciate it. So if you're new to the show, welcome. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you get something out of tonight's show and that you get something from every episode of Training Talk that we do, which we do twice a month. In case you didn't know, the first and third Thursdays of every month at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And if you're a returning viewer, well, thanks for coming by and spending time with us again. I really do appreciate it. I know how tough it is to find time in a busy schedule these days. Everybody's going, like every which direction. It's tough to find time to sit down and do anything, but I'm glad that you chose to spend some time with us and learning something about your personal defense. So just a little aside, in the last, I don't remember if it was the last show or the show before that, but whichever show it was, my guest and I were talking about sort of a consistent wardrobe. And I mentioned that here I am in my boring green Henley shirt again. And I mentioned that I have like a dozen of these things. And, the long sleeve shirts I've got are green as well. And I've got a couple, 2 or 3 of those. And I've got actually some turtleneck zip up. And you've seen me probably wear these they're green as well. And the same thing with pants. I've got multiples of a specific pair of pants that I like. And we talked about this, how great this is. So you don't have to make any decisions when you get up in the morning. Everything matches. And so I actually got 2 emails from people who were informing me that there are other colors in the world besides dark green. Yes, I know there are, but I like dark green. And my whole system is sort of based around this idea that this goes with everything else I have. If I changed my shirt color, like it would mess. I'd have to buy new. Then I'd have to worry about get up in the morning and worry about what goes with what. And I like the adult lazy version of Garanimals. Everything's the same color, everything matches, and I don't have to make any decisions in the morning. Now, this being said, I do have one shirt that is not green. I have a dark brown shirt, polo shirt that I very often wear on the training range. And the reason I wear that is because I very often travel to teach, and it's made of, I don't know, some sort of petrochemical. I don't know. But they didn't have it in dark green. All they had was dark brown. So that's what I took. If I ever find one in dark green, I will replace it. And I will no longer have my dark brown polo shirt. So that's the only exception. So to those who wrote, yes, thank you for telling me about the various hues and colors of clothing. That was very educational, but I'm sticking with what I got. Now, if you'd like to send me an email about my ugly green shirts or my long hair or anything else, you may do so. Grant at grantcunningham.com. Always happy to get your emails. And your suggestions, and sometimes, I've gotten sometimes some people have given me some really great show ideas too. So feel free to send those along. Always happy to get it, even if you do make fun of my clothes. All right. So this evening, My special guest tonight is a defensive firearms instructor from Iowa, and he's joining us tonight. We're going to talk a little bit later about being a good student in your class, but this is his first appearance on Training Talk, and I hope it won't be the last. And from 18 Zulu, please, I hope you'll take a good listen to Mike McElmeel. Mike, you there?
Yep. How are you?
Good. I didn't ask you, and I assumed, and I probably shouldn't. Mike or Michael?
Mike's fine.
Mike's fine. Okay, good.
Yep.
My apologies. I should have asked that at the beginning. So welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on and joining us tonight and spending some time. I anticipate a really good discussion. So why don't you give us a little idea of your background? Obviously, you're a PDN contributor. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be here. But give us a little background, what you do and how you do it and how you got into it and that kind of thing.
So grew up in Iowa, joined the military right out of high school, spent 22 years in the U.S. Army, primarily in the special operations community. I retired in 2004. Currently, I'm a critical care paramedic and an EMS educator, emergency medical services educator, but I teach a lot of defensive firearms and lay public medical classes, armed shooter response type things. I've really been teaching in one way or another since about the early 90s. I used to be heavily into skydiving. I was an accelerated free fall instructor at one point, and just always been kind of a non-traditional teacher. I do teach as an adjunct instructor in a couple community colleges here locally. So that's kind of my educational background.
Wow, I did not know that you had I saw the medical classes on your site. And I was going to ask you about your background in that, but that pretty much tells me I did not know that you were in EMS.
Yeah, that's my it's my full-time job, my day-to-day way I make a living.
Oh, wow. Well, great. Next time we have a chance to talk about medical stuff, now I have another resource, which is great. Well, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Before we get started talking about how to be a good student, which is, I think really important for people. I think a lot of people probably go to classes without really thinking about it very far ahead. But before we do that, as you know, and as some of our viewers know, and those who don't are going to find out right now, the PDN 2018 training tour kicks off here this weekend. Actually, technically, the grand kickoff is, I think, Monday. But the first class of the training tour classes of the training tour happen this weekend. And every year, for those who are new to this, every year we in the spring, between about the middle of March and the end of July, we get together all of the contributors here at Personal Defense Network. And to be a contributor to that Personal Defense Network, you have to be an active working defensive self-defense instructor. Whether it doesn't have to be firearms, it might be edged weapons, it might be unarmed or hand-to-hand stuff, it might be everything that sort of goes along with self-defense, right down to alarms and information security. But the important thing is that all of our contributors are active instructors. And so every spring we get together as many of our active instructors as we can, and we ask them to schedule classes especially during this period of time, so that we have not only just a sort of central place to let everybody know, but so that we have classes in various parts of the country. Now, one of the stipulations that we have is that we have to travel and present these in places other than our hometown. And the idea is to get really good training out to places where you might not get it otherwise. There are a lot of classes that happen in small areas, and our sponsors underwrite, and that helps us get great training out into people who might not have the opportunity to do it, to get it a little closer to their hometown where they don't have to, fly across the country and stay in a hotel for 4 or 5 days. And we do this every spring, and we just get a large number of classes going. I don't know how many this year, but last year we set a record. We had I think over 100 classes. I think we're probably going to do better than that this year, and covering a wide range of topics all over the country. So let's take a look at what's going to go on here in the next couple of weeks with the tour. And I'm going to pop over here to the tour. Before I do that, I want to mention, I mentioned that we have some really great sponsors who make the tour possible. And here's our 2018 tour sponsors: 511 clothing and accessories. I've got a couple of 511 messenger bags around here. I think a 511 rifle bag and probably some pants too. 511, great stuff. Angel Fire ammunition. Rob Pincus has been using a lot of that these days. Crossbreed holsters. Of course, Crossbreed is one of our original, I think, tour sponsors, and they've been great. I know all the folks at Crossbreed. Wonderful group of people. HoloSun, which I think is new this year. I don't remember them from last year, but maker of red dot sights specifically. I've had some students with HoloSun optics, and they appear to be really good. Mission First Tactical, Patriot Ordnance Factory, and CERT pistols, the CERT training pistols that put a little laser out so you can train safely, even in your basement. Springfield Armory, of course, another stalwart sponsor of the training tour. The United States Concealed Carry Association, a great group of people. They have a good magazine out. I've written a few articles for their magazine over the years, and of course, really good insurance program for self-defense for concealed carriers, and of course, Veridian Weapon Technologies. They've sponsored us in the past, and very innovative maker of lasers and lights and that kind of thing. So those are our sponsors this year. I wanted to just give a shout out to them because they're the ones that make this whole thing possible, that make it possible for us to get out to areas of the country that we might not otherwise get. So let's take a quick look, see what's coming up for the first couple of weeks of the tour here. And here's, if you go to the PDN website, you'll see the training tour dates and locations under training tour dates and locations right there. And for the first couple of weeks, of course, Mike Seeklander is teaching a competition handgun course. I'll be in Phoenix, Arizona this weekend teaching my Threat Center revolver class. And then the tour officially kicks off in St. Augustine, Florida, because that's where it always kicks off from. And so every spring in St. Augustine, Florida, the tour starts, and of course Rob Pincus is going to be there teaching combat focused shooting, carbine, two-person armed defense course, by the way, is really good. And then in Alliance, Ohio, Don Edwards is going to be teaching combat carbine, his level 2 class. And then again in St. Augustine, Florida, Rob is going to be teaching armed defense around vehicles, armed home defense tactics, and again, combat focused shooting. And he'll be there for the better part of a week. Looks like, yeah, he'll be there for a full week teaching this year. Going to Peoria, Arizona, our good friend Cecil Birch. You've seen Cecil on the show if you're a regular viewer. He's going to be doing his entangled handgun class, and that is a phenomenal class. I'll highlight this for you. I should highlight each of these so you can see them. He's going to be teaching his entangled handgun class in Peoria, Illinois. Definitely worth taking if you're anywhere, or excuse me, Peoria, Arizona. What am I saying? If you're anywhere near Arizona, take that class. It's a good one. And then Rob Pincus goes to Covington, Georgia for a few days teaching his combat focus, two-person armed defense and carbine classes. And then in Pryor Creek, Oklahoma, on the 2nd through the 6th of next month, Mike Seeklander is going to be doing his intensive competition handgun class. And if you want to become a better competitor, there's nobody better to teach you than Mike McElmeel. The guy's good. Definitely worth taking. And then, of course, Rob goes to up to Virginia this time and teaching his classes. And, of course, PDN contributor and frequent guest here on the show, Barrett Kendrick, is going to be in Sparta, Illinois, teaching defensive focus handgun and defensive focus carbine. So the last one I want to bring your attention to is in Pryor Creek, Oklahoma, the 13th and 15th of next month. Advanced Shooting Mechanics with Mike McElmeel and the great one, Rob Latham. And you've seen, of course, Rob on the training or the PDN live show with Rob Pincus and Rob Latham, great guy. And of course, there's a reason he's called the Great One, because he holds the record for the greatest number of wins in practical or in pistol competition, shooting competition, modern shooting competition, USPSA, IDPA, that kind of thing. Nobody better, and he's a good instructor too. So if you're in Oklahoma, or even if you're not, take that if you want to become a better competitive shooter. So that's what's coming up the next couple of weeks in the training tour. So get out and check out, by the way, check out all the great classes that are listed on the site, because there are a bunch of them, and get out and get some training. Take the advantage of all the classes that are happening, all the great PDN contributors that are out there, and being underwritten by our tremendous sponsors here at Personal Defense Network. So that's the training tour update. You know what I need, Mike? I need some sort of kind of a theme music for the training tour update. That's what I need. That's what's missing. Need something. All right. So let's talk about being a good student. And I guess the first thing I'm going to ask you is why do we even need to talk about this? Why do people need to worry about being a good student in a defensive shooting class or a self-defense class of any kind?
Well, I mean, if we assume that folks are going to a defensive shooting class or any training really to better themselves, as a good student, you should present some sort of value to the class. You should bring value to the class and receive value from the instructor. If you're just going there to validate skills or things you already know, it's kind of a waste of everybody's time.
So it's as much about, I guess there's sort of two parts to it. First of all, so that you can learn more yourself, but also so that you can help other people learn as well. I guess what happens, and you and I have both had really good students. We've probably had some really bad students. So what are the kinds of things that happen, at least in your experience, when you've got somebody who really hasn't done their preparation, really hasn't thought about how to be a student? What does the class end up looking like?
Well, you kind of do a disservice to the rest of the students when you start focusing on somebody that, I mean, there's different types of students, as we know. You may have the person that was not forced, but maybe coerced to show up there by a family member. Their heart's really not into it. There may be somebody that has inappropriate gear. So you have to sort that out. There's students that maybe think that the training's below them. They show up to the class like, oh, I already know how to do all this stuff. So what ends up happening is, as an instructor, maybe you're focusing too much, particularly on those first two, kind of giving your attention to them, and the rest of the class kind of doesn't get your full attention. So that can be a problem, obviously, and you don't really want to do that. And then on the other hand, with the student that maybe thinks that they know everything, they're really not participating the way they should. Other students see that, and it kind of brings down the energy level of the class, maybe.
So you said something interesting, and I want to talk about this, because you talked about not having appropriate gear, and I think this is as good a place as any to start. The first thing, if you're preparing for a class, the first thing to do is make sure that you've got the right kind of gear. Now, I usually put out a little handout or something that tells people what they should have, right? You probably do the same thing.
Yep.
But students don't often follow that, do they?
No, they don't. I mean, we've had, in the past, you see things like handguns that don't fit the hand, or they're not familiar with how to reload their handgun. I've taught a uh, combat focused carbine class where a gentleman showed up with no sling, um, and you have to have a sling to do some of the drills, so it was a problem. That sort of thing. Just not getting the info and kind of doing pre-class preparation, I guess.
And I think most instructors are probably like us. They probably do put out some sort of on their website or when you sign up or something, some indication of what people need to bring. So, I mean, I don't make a secret. Do you make it a secret?
I don't think I do. I think I put out the info plenty ahead of time, and then over several different. I mean, Facebook and email and all these sort of things. I think sometimes people honestly uh, get busy or they get complacent. Oh, I've been to a class before. I know what I need to take, and maybe they don't read this information, or they read it and forget it. I'm not quite sure, but it happens.
Yeah. Do you ever have situations where people show up without enough ammo?
Yeah, it happens. I'm not going to say a lot, but it happens fairly regularly in the intuitive defensive shooting courses that we run, the 1 day and the 2 day. You tell them, yeah, we're going to shoot 700 rounds, and they don't really believe you, and they bring 400, and by noon they're trying to buy more or find some more.
So the first thing is really actually read the equipment list. When we say X number of rounds, we really do mean that. And yeah, sometimes you'll go home with some left over. I mean, that happens, right? But when we say 500 rounds or 700 rounds or whatever it is, you really kind of need that because we're going to make you shoot. That's the whole idea. Um, One of the interesting things that you said, and I run into this, thankfully not as much uh, in handgun classes as I do in rifle classes, but um, coming in with the attitude that you already know it. And this, I don't know, this seems to be primarily a male affliction, isn't it? I don't find very many women doing this.
Yeah, I would agree. The females that come to the rifle classes are usually new to the platform, and they're just soaking up that knowledge. Um, as it happened, the funny story behind the article I wrote was it was from a student at one of my rifle classes uh, that was being, inattentive and kind of thought he knew everything. And I started thinking, why are you even here? And what, why am I teaching you if you don't need to be taught? That kind of gave me the spark to write the entire article.
All right. The One of the things I think that happens in a lot of those cases where uh, I, I think there are people who just come to sort of collect the certificate.
I agree with
Um,
that. Yeah.
yeah, and you get those, and it it really does. First of all, it makes my job harder. It makes your job harder. It makes the instructor's job harder because we have to take time out from our plan, our plan curriculum to deal with um, things that maybe shouldn't be, it shouldn't even be brought up at this context, right? Um, you have those students who want to talk about something that's like a tangent off of what you want to do. And that's kind of part of the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to let people get too far off into the weeds about things, because once again, then you're being inattentive to the majority of the class, and but you should be able to answer obviously the questions that they have and go a little bit farther in depth, but they need to stay on task. So they don't need to be talking about uh, things that are of interest to maybe one person in the world, I guess, kind of be an extreme example, but and that person being them. But you want to try to keep those answers to the benefit of everybody.
What would now I know what my answer would be to this, and I'm pretty sure I know what you would do. But what would you say to the couple, the husband and wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, or other sort of intimate relations like that, who come to class? Um, I I usually separate them to
Yeah, I
forestall
was going to say
problems. I think
my first thing
most
is I
of them
usually
do.
separate them.
But what's your advice to the maybe couple who's out there right now who's listening to this? What's your advice to them to get the most out of the class?
Well, first, I kind of applaud them for doing things together. Sometimes it's hard to find common interests, so that's something. If they can find a common interest, that's great. But I would really approach the class as an individual rather than a team, right? Then they didn't come as a couple; they came as two students. So as you said, I generally separate them. They need to worry about themselves, and that's a hard thing. We talk about competence being an individual kind of subjective thing, and but people get wrapped up in competition, even if they're not competitive people. As a general rule, we everybody's got a little bit of a competitive streak, and if you put couples together, then they seem to try to be paying attention more to what their other half is doing rather than the instruction, and they can do a lot better if they're not worrying about that. So I try to tell them just to worry about their own individual progress and not what the other person's doing.
Does this go the same for maybe like a couple of buddies, work buddies who have decided to take a class and show up together?
Absolutely. Especially if they do a lot of classes together. That's great for like the course you mentioned in the tour, the two-person armed defense. That's a great class for a couple buddies to take or a couple to take. But when you're taking an individual skills sort of class, you need to take it as an individual and try to kind of focus on your own development, not what the other person or the other part of your group is doing.
Okay. That's good advice. We had first, of course, read the instructions, and then second, go in with the understanding that you're going to be focusing on your skill development, not somebody else's skill development or competing with the other guy. How about the idea of competing with the other students? I mean, even people that maybe they don't know.
And that can be a problem. Like I said, people, just even the most uncompetitive person will have just a little bit of a competitive streak, or moreover, they'll feel like they're doing. Generally, what happens, they feel like they're doing worse than everybody else, and then they start getting down on themselves. Maybe this is their first class ever. They've never done anything but go out and plink at the range with their significant other, and now they're going to a class they've never had any formal instruction before. They feel like, I'm doing worse than everybody else. Everybody seems to know what they're doing. I don't even know what the range commands are. And you kind of have to dispel those fears and kind of help them along and make them comfortable and let them know that, once again, competence is kind of an individual thing. And we just want them to be better when they leave than when they showed up. And that's going to be a win for us.
There's one thing I like to bring up, and in order when we're talking about things that people can do to be a better student, and I'm surprised that this didn't come up first from either one of us, but being on time, right? That's huge. I mean, uh, if you arrive late to a class, and we're not talking like 2 or 3 hours, but we're talking like 15 or 20 minutes. That's actually an issue, isn't it? Because
It is.
you do something at the beginning that's important, and probably I do too, that they really can't participate after that. And so what are they going to miss right at first?
Well, generally, that's when we go over the safety rules and the medical brief. And that's generally in my class, that's the only time we're really indoors. I kind of point out the admins where the facilities are. So kind of the range brief overall is they're going to miss that if they're 15, 20 minutes late.
Yeah. Do you let people participate after come in and participate after you've done the safety briefing?
If I have an assistant instructor, then maybe pull them to the side and give them that information. But once again, now you're pulling an assistant instructor off the line when his or her job is to be helping, kind of monitor the other students and helping them with, say, grip or stance or whatever we're doing at that particular time.
Right. So be on time.
Yes, be on time.
If someone says it starts at 8:30, be there at 8:30. And plus there's always the paperwork to do, right? I mean, you have to fill out waivers and all that kind of thing too. So, you really do need to be there on time to get this stuff done. So, that's part of reading the instruction sheet is knowing what time you have to be there. And during the safety briefing, I would pay undivided attention to the safety briefing. It's not the time to be having your phone out and doing the Instagram thing. I haven't seen that very much. I mean, most people, I think, pay pretty close attention, but you may have seen that.
No, I was going to say that at least in my area where I teach, if they seek out instruction and they pay good money for the class, they're pretty motivated to, at least in the beginning, to pay attention and do what's asked. So the safety briefing and the medical briefing they're pretty attentive. I haven't really had a problem with people not paying attention to that stuff.
Okay, good. And with you being a medical professional, I'm sure your medical briefing is a little more in depth than mine is, which is great. Speaking of equipment, do you ever suggest that students have their own medical kit with them?
I talk a little bit because it's not a medical class. We're there to shoot. But like my background, obviously, like I stated, is in the emergency medical field. So I kind of talk about what's in my kit. I tell them they should have one when they go to the range. And I really encourage them to kind of look around and see what's available and tell them I can give them some advice on what to buy if they don't have anything.
Do you ever have students show up with their own trauma kits?
Yep, quite often. Most of our students are, like I said, pretty motivated, and the ones that seek out training are what I would call our regular students, because we have repeat customers. They usually get on the bandwagon and they start buying their own stuff. And the ankle trauma kit's pretty popular around here, so a lot of folks have those.
I've noticed in the last couple of years a big increase in the number of students who are carrying their own trauma kits. And in fact, I would say I'll bet the number of students coming with their own trauma kits has doubled over the last 2 years.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that.
Yeah.
It's not unusual.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, because I think it's an important thing. I think it's an important thing to carry all the time, not just when you're at the range, and I think there's some awareness of that now. All right. So besides their gun, their ammunition, their holster, their eye protection, ear protection, right? Their spare magazines. Aside from the actual shooting gear, what do you suggest that students bring along with them to class, and whether you suggest it formally in your equipment list or informally, what do you think they should bring along besides that stuff?
Well, they need to pay attention to the weather conditions. So, right here where I'm at right now in Iowa, it's still a little chilly, so we might be wearing jackets, maybe even a stocking hat on some mornings, maybe some thin gloves. So, they need to look at that sort of thing. They don't want to be showing up in flip-flops and shorts in March. I've seen it happen. I've actually had a guy show up in flip-flops before. And then some maybe comfort items. I don't know about the range where you teach regularly, but kind of our home range is in a small town. There's not a lot of fast food places or anything like that real close. I try to keep lunch to like half an hour. So I encourage people to bring their own food, bring their own snacks, definitely bring water. We usually provide some water, but definitely encourage them to bring some stuff for hydration because um, you can get dehydrated at any time, no matter the weather conditions. So I usually give quite a bit of water breaks, more when it's hot, but quite a few water breaks, and then just comfort items. If they need a chair, one of those foldable chairs, maybe they have bad knees or hips and they need to sit down during reload breaks or whatever, just to kind of take some you know pressure off those knees, stuff like that. It's kind of some comfort items and some weather items.
I think the point about water is really important, and it's true. You can get dehydrated in any conditions. And I think a lot of people, especially when it's not really hot out, don't really think about drinking enough because you're active, you're doing stuff. Some classes, some courses are very, very active. So you're doing a lot of stuff. You're shedding a lot of water in perspiration, and so having enough water is critical. And like you, I generally will provide some water, but everyone needs to bring at least a couple liters of water with them. Uh-oh. And Mike just disappeared. Let's see if we can get him back here.
I gotcha. You kind of phased out on me there for a minute.
Yeah, what happened there? You just
Yep, I had to. You kind of froze, and then I lost the screen, so I had to reload it. So,
oh, okay.
yeah.
There we go.
So anyway, you're talking about water and
Yeah, I was talking about water and the importance of water, and of course, our friend Caleb Causey is very, very big on drinking water all the time, and that's something that, like you, I encourage people to do. But people need to bring their own water, and maybe even a bottle or two of electrolyte drink might also be useful. I'm not a big fan of people drinking a lot of that stuff, but a little bit every once in a while I found it helps with muscle cramps and that kind of thing. So definitely drink water, bring lunch, bring snacks. One of the things that I tell people, I don't know if you do this, but one of the things I tell people is that in addition to the water and snacks, bring something to clean your hands with before you start eating, those snacks. Do you do that as well?
Not specifically. A lot of people do. I mean, that's a very good point, though. You want to use some hand sanitizer or something to get that residue off.
Yeah.
There's some bad chemicals that come out of rounds, so if there's stuff all over your hands, you probably want to clean it off.
Yeah. So the equipment you need, food, water, things to wash your hands, that kind of thing, all really important to your own, and this is really for your own comfort and safety. Now let's get into the meat of it. Let's get into attitude and participation and all of the stuff that sort of goes with that. One of the things that I very often tell people is that, and I don't mean this to sound, I'm not sure the word. I don't mean this to sound authoritarian, but I tell them it really is sort of my way or the highway, in that I want them to try the technique, to actually use it throughout the class, and once they're out of class, if they decide that they don't want to do it, that's fine. But I really want them to have some experience and get some repetition in with what I'm teaching, so that they can make those decisions from a base of knowledge. How about you? What do you tell people?
No, I agree, and it's more or less what I say. I mean, they're coming to us, or they're coming to me, or you, or whatever instructor they come to for our knowledge. There's some reason that they decided to come to us. They looked us up on the internet. They heard about us from somebody else. So they need to kind of come with an empty cup and try to gain as much knowledge as they can. And they need to make a good faith effort to perform drills and techniques and whatever we're telling them the way we're telling them. Because if they're kind of come and just do the same old thing, it kind of defeats the purpose of instruction. So I'm like you. I just tell them, hey, I know you may do it a different way. I'm teaching you what I believe to be the most efficient and because of that, the best way, in my opinion. And so I just try to do it my way, and we'll see how it goes. And once you leave class, I guess it's up to you. I'm not going to be there looking over your shoulder, but I'm teaching you what I feel is the best way to do whatever it is we're learning today.
I think that's a really important point to drive home is that anytime that you've signed up for a class, you have signed up for it sort of with the assumption that you want that person's particular expertise. And it always seems kind of odd that people would sign up for a class to get that expertise and then not paying attention to it, right?
Oh yeah, I think I mean, you kind of, and I never thought about it that way, but you actually kind of hit the nail on the head when you said sometimes people show up just to get that certificate.
Yeah.
And those are the people that maybe aren't really willing to change what they're doing or what they've been doing. Um, and those are kind of the students that are difficult to get to, I guess.
So be open to change, right?
Yes, absolutely. Try new things. That's what you're there for. It's kind of the range is kind of a safe space to make mistakes and try new things and suck at something so you can get better. I saw a meme the other day that says, sucking at something is the first step to being sort of kind of good at it. So, and that's where you're there to learn. So let's learn something.
Well, I've sucked at drywalling for a long time, and I haven't gotten any better at it. So
No.
I'm still working though. Um, one of talking about doing the drills as you've asked people to do. What do you tell that person who maybe has a physical limitation that they can't do it the way that you're asking? What do you tell that person?
So we're going to try to work with their limitation and modify the drill, um, and still get the goal accomplished, right? So we're going to modify the gear, modify the technique, I guess, and just work with their disability. There's a lot of people out there that have different disabilities, and you just got to kind of keep the intent in mind and try to modify the technique or the gear to meet that intent.
Um, so there's very often as I'm thinking about the weather in Iowa and I'm thinking about the weather here in Oregon. Um, I'm going to be teaching in Arizona this weekend where it's going to be in the low 70s and sunny. It's going to be like, perfect. Which is why I like teaching in Arizona because it's really nice. But I'm thinking in terms of those people, of course, even in Arizona, they have, there are times when it gets just obscenely hot. In other parts of the country, it might be cold, it might be wet, that kind of thing. Um, what do you tell students in terms of getting through, about pushing through those environmental limitations?
Well, we have to kind of work with their physical comfort, right? That's as an instructor, that's kind of a shared thing so we need to take extra breaks if it's hot, encourage them to drink water, remind them to bring gloves maybe. But yes, at some point, it's on the student to kind of, like you said, push through some of these physical hardships, um, because their next defensive encounter or their first defensive encounter might not be when it's 70 degrees outside. And if you spend a lot of time carrying a handgun for self-defense in Iowa, you're going to be spending a lot of time wearing gloves, and your hands might be cold, and those sort of things. So you need to learn how to deal with those situations. And once again, doing it on the range is where we learn what works and what doesn't work.
I think it's important to point out here, and there's sort of an undercurrent going through this whole discussion that as instructors, we do our best to make it easy for people, right?
We try to within certain parameters. I mean, they've got to perform ultimately.
Right.
But we, give them the guidance and give them the parameters and assist them to be successful, in whatever the task is.
Um, What about that person who we talked at the very beginning about not having, not necessarily adequate gear, but suitable gear, I think is the term. So what do you do when you in the middle of class? How do you help that student who might have suboptimal gear?
Best case scenario, and what I usually do is I have several, I'll bring extra handguns or whatever. I'll let them borrow something that's more appropriate that I may have with me, if that works for them, and they can finish out the class with some better gear. If that's not going to work, or I don't have anything available, and once again we'll have to modify the drill. So if they've brought a small subcompact to a high round count class, and they're having to load magazines, a lot more than other people, maybe you say, okay, when I tell everybody else to shoot 3 to 5, you're going to shoot 2 to 3, stuff like that, just to kind of work with their gear to the best of our ability.
All right, so the student, they've prepared themselves properly. They've got good gear. They've listened to the gear thing. They've listened to your instruction. Um, at some point, the student will probably be corrected about something. So, how should the student approach the corrections that the instructor is suggesting?
So first and foremost, they should take that as not negative criticism, but constructive criticism, and try to fix that issue and do what the instructor asked them to do. But on the second part, as part of adding value to the class or the instruction. If they don't understand the instruction, or they feel like they can't do the instruction, they need to ask questions and get clarification. That's part of that contract between the instructor and the student, to get that value. So they should be asking, why are we doing it this way? And the instructor, for his or her part, should be able to give a little bit deeper explanation of why we're doing it this way.
Um, what does the student do? And obviously, I'm not talking about you in this case, but what does the student do? The student who's really trying to learn, what does the student do if the instructor doesn't give them um, a good? I hate to use this as kind of a nebulous term, but what if the instructor doesn't give them good answers? What should the student do?
Well, maybe rephrase their question. If they're not getting the answer they're looking for, that's kind of on the instructor, unfortunately. Uh, so the student's just going to have to work within the boundaries of the information they've been given. But that's kind of unfortunate, because then they don't get a good experience. So as instructors, we need to be able to provide those answers to the best of our ability. Or if we don't know the answer, we should, I kind of hate the cliche, well, I don't know, but I'll find out and get back to you. But really, that's kind of what we should be doing with people. It's okay as an instructor to say, I don't know. I'm not the, end all be all of instructors. There's things I don't know. There's people that are way better at certain things than I am. And if I don't know something, I may ask another instructor. I may tell them that I'll get back with them. When I was a military free fall instructor for several years when I was in the military, and we used to pass students off if one of our students just wasn't getting it or wasn't listening to one particular instructor. We would have him switch to another instructor. Sometimes just the method of instruction or personality may be able to get through to somebody where the original instructor may have been having some issues.
I can imagine in in free fall parachuting, the importance of listening and to the instructor and doing what he's telling you is probably significantly more important even than it is on the shooting range, I can imagine. Um, so should a, should a, should a student ever take a class over one that they've already taken?
Oh, absolutely. I think you uh, learn things, new things every time. I've taken same class over multiple times. I've taken it from different instructors. I take classes that I teach as a student. And when I teach those or take those classes, I'm looking to build my own skills, but I'm also looking at how other instructors present the same material. And I might catch a tidbit here or there that's better than what I'm currently doing because we need to evolve as instructors as well and continue to get better at the instruction piece.
Is the word evolve a good word for students to adopt for their own skill development?
I think so. One of the things I mentioned in the article was that even if you feel like the drill or the technique or whatever you're doing is below your skill level, there's always tiny incremental things you can do to kind of be better. I've got a good friend and a mentor and one of my or my jujitsu instructor who's a very high level martial arts practitioner. He often takes classes that are below his skill level as far as the hands-on grappling, but he always focuses on what can I do better? Can I tweak this little, is my hand in the right place on this particular movement? What can I do better? And we can do the same thing on the range. Is my grip perfect every single time? If it's not, then that's something you can work on. Something is my trigger press smooth into the rear? If I'm not doing it every time, then I can continue to work on that stuff. So there's always little things you can do to evolve. And once we master those, we move on to the more complex things and so on and so on.
The I tend to agree with that, by the way. I think it's very useful for people to revisit skills because I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of information that happens in a 2-day class. It's a lot to digest, and there's going to be something that everybody misses, and even on the second and third and maybe even fourth time. And I think one of the really valuable things in terms of student skill development is to actually go back and do that for the reasons that you said. And I think that's incredibly valuable. Um, what about feedback to the instructor? And what I mean by this is what is the student's responsibility or what should the student be doing in terms of his or her feedback to the instructor? And this can be formally or informally as part of a debrief. I think many instructors, probably most, have some sort of a debrief of some length at the end of their class. It may only be 5 or 10 minutes, or it might be an hour and a half, but I think everybody does something like that. What should the student be doing in terms of his or her feedback or additional learning as part of a debrief sort of situation?
I like to tell students that, I first off, I make everybody talk. Nobody gets to sit there silent during the debrief because everybody has something to add. I also tell them I don't want to hear how great the class. I mean, I like to hear how great the class was, but that's not all I want to hear. I like to hear the good, the bad, any additional questions they have, suggestions for improvement. And if they think if they think something I said was the stupidest thing they've ever heard, I really want them to call me out on it because that gives me the ability or the opportunity to say, well, I don't think it's stupid and this is why. And then, provokes more discussion and gets some more learning out there. And you're able to go a little bit farther in depth than maybe you were on the firing line about individual subjects. People didn't either understand or maybe they heard it wrong and they just didn't get the concept. So I think feedback to the instructor, both good and bad, is vitally important. And it also helps us make our courses better because maybe they did say, hey, Mike, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And I'll be like, yeah, that was the stupidest thing that I've ever said. So maybe I shouldn't say that anymore. Because we all, we all misspeak or may say something we don't mean to say sometimes. But hearing it from another point of view is helpful for us as instructors.
So I think ultimately, as a student, You have a responsibility to yourself. You have a responsibility to the other students around you, and you've got a responsibility to the instructor, don't you?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And just you're there to be, a good student and participate fully in all activities, do what you're asked to do, provide good feedback, uh, and just try to improve and leave the class with more knowledge and maybe an improved skill set.
Okay, cool. I want to, before we wrap up, I want to take a couple of minutes out here to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart. I don't know if it's near and dear to your heart. I guess we'll find out. Um, but and that is the membership side of Personal Defense Network, and we have, of course, a lot of great articles and videos and all kinds of stuff here on the public face of Personal Defense Network. But we also have a membership side, a membership portal, to talk in web terms, to a whole lot more information here at Personal Defense Network. We're talking DVD length videos. In not too distant future, people are going to ask, what's a DVD? But right now, DVD length videos. We've got access to our online education, our distance education courses, and that is growing like crazy. We've got all kinds of new courses coming online this year, and feedback on those is really great. So we have video collections, pre-curated selections of videos on a very specific topic. So if you want to learn everything that the collected wisdom of PDN contributors, who again are all active instructors, if you want to learn the collective wisdom, we have the video collections. We've got all kinds of stuff on the membership side of Personal Defense Network. And to become a premium member, all you have to do is look around on the site, and there are links everywhere to sign up for premium membership, to go. I think they say go to the next level or something like that. Take advantage of those. Sign up for premium membership, and you're gonna love it. There's just a lot of information there. I've been a premium member since it started. I haven't seen everything yet. It's amazing just how much stuff we've got. And here's the deal. Normally it's $39.95 a year for premium membership at Personal Defense Network, but I've got a deal for you. All you have to do is sign up for premium membership. You go through the registration routine and into the payment window, and there will be a little box there, and it says discount code or coupon code. I don't remember which, but you'll recognize it when you see it. We all know how to take advantage of a discount code. All right. And in that box, I want you to put this: Grant 10, Grant, the number one, the number zero, all one word, no space. It looks like a space, but there's no space there. Grant 10, all one word. And you will get your first year of premium membership for only $10. And it isn't time limited membership. It isn't, conditional membership. It's full membership for your first year in Personal Defense Network's premium membership for only $10. Now that is a deal. And I know how much people spend at the local Starbucks. This is like, a couple of lattes and it covers you for the entire year. What kind of a deal is that? It's a great deal. So take advantage of it. Grant 10, Grant, the number one, the number zero, all one word, your first full year of premium membership here at Personal Defense Network for only $10. Such a deal. Take advantage of it. All right. That having been said, Mike, why don't you tell everybody where they can get a hold of you and reach you and see what you do and all that kind of thing?
Well, you've got my website, 18zulu.com. So spell out the number 18, no space, Zulu, ZULU.com is my website. You can find me on Facebook, the same spot, 18Zulu, Instagram as well. I also do a podcast with my good friend Ernie Traw on a kind of bi-monthly basis through TPS Media, and that podcast is called CVO Gun Talk. We talk a lot about things, and we just kind of ramble on about the gun world and a lot of other things like that. So find me at all those places.
That's okay. I ramble on too. That's okay.
So it makes it fun.
And I know Ernie. Ernie's a good guy, and I did not know you guys did a podcast until we started talking earlier. So I'm going to be checking that out and listen to both of you guys, since now I know you too. And so thank you so much for being on the show. I hope I can get you back on again someday. And on that note, folks, our next show is the 5th of next month. Let's see, that would be April. The 5th of April, that's the first Thursday in April, and that will be our first show of the month. So that's 2 weeks from tonight. Same place, same time, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here. Of course, don't forget the code for premium membership for $10 for your first year, Grant 10. Don't forget that. Don't forget my email address. Send me those emails. I enjoy getting them, even if you do make fun of my ugly green shirts. At least nobody's making fun of my long hair anymore since I got it cut. So feel free to send me those emails. Like I said, I do enjoy getting them. I really do. And make sure you check out all of the other great articles. Make sure you check out Mike's article here at Personal Defense Network on being a better student. Check out all the other great articles. Take advantage of the tour classes that are coming up because those are, again, this is just a great opportunity to get great training and choose from a huge number of classes by some great instructors on the training tour. So be sure and take advantage of that. Lots of good stuff coming up in spring. Spring's a wonderful time here at Personal Defense Network, and I do hope you take advantage of it. So we'll see you next month, the 5th of April, right here at Personal Defense Network for the next episode of Training Talk. Good night, everybody.
Night.